Hi everyone, Raquel here from scrapcosy. Today I'm sharing with you how to create this tag, which I created in order to teach a short class at the show Stitches in Birmingham this February 2019. But then there was a change of plans and I thought a different project. If you guys wanted me to create an online course for you with end-to-end projects and more details, perhaps real-time videos, not speed up, please let me know in the comments. This is an idea I had in mind, but I don't know if you'll be interested at all. If you are, you could also let me know what type of projects you like to see there. For example, technique tags, art journals, albums, or any other things. Feel free to type as much as you like. I love to read all your comments and to know a bit more about you. Well, back to today's video. For this tag, I used one of my 2 stamp sets released on 2019 with paperartsy, ESC17, and one of the 2 coordinating stencils, PS133. Okay, let's get started. The first step is going to be stamping with archival ink. I'm using potting soil. This ink is waterproof and that's what I need because I will be working with some water-based products and I don't want my image to smear. I need to make sure that I cover everything with ink and I press very well on the paper. I've cut how long I actually pressed on the paper, but it was a long time to make sure that I got a good impression. The paper I'm using is a Smoothie Heavy by paperartsy. So I use that to create the tag and I'm using it also to stamp 2 more flowers. You'll see that in here I didn't press so hard on the middle one and then my impression was not perfect. So I went ahead and stamped the other flower there. I'm stamping these because I'm going to fussy cut them to add some volume to my tag. The next step is going to add some color. I'm using satin glaze by paperartsy and I'll mix that with infusions. Sunset Beach for the flowers and olive tree for the leaves. I start with olive tree first. So I put a drop of satin glaze. That's a lot. You'll see that I will put some back on the jar because I'm not using it. And that's a tiny bit amount of infusions that I put. So I'm mixing it very well. And with that, I'm creating my own translucent paint. Once all the walnut is dissolved, I test my color and then I start painting everything that it's green. So all the leaves and all the stems from the flowers. I'm not doing any shadowing here, I'm just applying color. You could do shadowing, actually, by applying a second layer or a third layer of paint if you wanted. This is translucent paint, which means that, well, it's not opaque. So it basically adds layers and layers of color and intensity if you put one on top of the other. But basically here I'm just coloring all the bits and pieces that I think that they are green. And it's better to work with very little amount because then it will dry very fast, rather than applying a lot. So that's why I kind of load my brush and then I unload it a little bit. So I just get a tiny bit amount to work on. And once I finish with that green color, then I'm going to clean my brush. I basically used a tissue paper to unload the big amount of it, then goes into water and then dry, and it's good to go for the next color. That now it's Sunset Beach. And I really took a tiny bit amount to create that paint. And it will get me like a very soft pink and very vintage color. I love it. So I'm just going to color those beads and the outside edges of the flowers, which will probably not be seen, but just in case, I'm just adding some color. Because the other 2 flowers that I stamped will be actually seen on top of this. So just that little tiny bit amount of color on the edges will do. Once I finish with the tag, then I'm going to color with the same mix the other 2 flowers. So here the tiny one, well, tiny no, the small one of the 2. And again, I'm not adding any shadowing or whatsoever. The flower itself has some shadowing with the drawing for the stamps. And here you don't need to pay attention to the edges. Doesn't matter if you go beyond the line. We're just going to cut them with the scissors, so just go with it. and I was running a bit low on color, so I was mixing it with a lot of glaze. I didn't want to mix more infusions. I thought it would be enough, and actually it did. So that's all painted now, and I'll clean my brush, and then I'll save some of that glaze, which is still clear, back to the jar, and I'll clean the rest out just with the same tiny bit of tissue paper. And now I'm going to stencil on top of the tag, and I'm going to use again the same archival ink color that I used, potting soil, with a foam applicator. And I'm using that stencil, which is repositionable. I like to design stencils with different patterns that you can actually, repeat and repeat over and over. So basically you can cover a surface as big as you need. This stencil has two different patterns, one on the top left corner, which is the one that I'm using. It's a little bit more flowery, those dots, if you want to say that. And the other one is more a proper circle. So you have two patterns in one. And basically you just need to reposition wherever you've stenciled a little bit. Use that as a guide to position the next part of it. And then you can carry on and keep on building your background as you need. And I'm using again archival ink because I'm going to apply some water afterwards, and I don't want this ink to smear or move at all. So I'm making sure that I cover all the white spaces in the tag. Just a bit more here and there. And then I'll go for the next layer, which will be applying grunge paste through the stencil. This is a texture paste by paperartsy. I love it. It's plaster based. It's very grungy, and I'm going to apply the technique where I just cover half of the pattern, or a bit random here and there. So exactly on top, no shadow here, as I've done on other videos. This is just exactly on top where it was, and it's a partial coverage, let's say. So I can still see the pattern inked, but also with the grunge paste. And since this is not dry, I'm just stenciling bits and parts that are far away from each other, so I don't place the stencil exactly on top and mix it and destroy my just stenciled texture paste, if that makes sense. So I'm working on separate areas. You could heat set that with a heat tool, and then you will be good to go and put the stencil on top of the things that you have just put the grunge paste on, because it's very good, this paste, that it can be heat set with a heat tool and it will not blister or anything. I love it. But I was being a bit lazy, so here I'm holding as I can the stencil to not destroy the previous grunge paste applied. But that's it. I'm done. I'll leave it aside and it will dry by the time I come back to it. So I'm now stamping other parts, the butterfly, the sentiment, and one lace. The butterfly will be there as well as the flowers, like floating in the tag. And then the sentiment will be, well, as you've seen in the pictures, it will be at the bottom part, and it will be framed by two of those ribbons. I stamped the first butterfly, but I think that my ink is not that juicy anymore. It needs a bit of refreshment or something. So I stamped the second butterfly. And now I'm stamping the sentiment, be curious and follow your truth. And I'm going to stamp twice that line. And my original idea was that I would be good enough with the gap that I create here, because I'm stamping one and then I'm stamping another one at the bottom. But, well, you'll see that I haven't left enough room for my sentiment to fit in. But I'll sort that out, you'll see. So now with goldencents, I'm going to apply it there, and I'm going to spritz some water. So this is like watercoloring, mixing it very well, and just applying it on top of my sentiment and in the spaces between the two lines that I created. This is even quicker than applying the glaze. Now I'm using Infusions Violetta. This is a beautiful color. Mixed like that, it gives you like a very warm purple finish. I love this color. But you'll see that I found it too different from the other one that I put on the flowers and the greens, so you'll see that I will tone it down with a bit of goldencents. But I'm advancing too much, you'll see that later. So now it's time for fussy cutting. Basically I will not put all the cutting here, because it basically you just go through the edges and cut, yeah, until you actually get those flowers. And I'm cutting the two of them. You could actually do a third one, and then instead of cutting around the edges, cut the inner petals to create more 3D effect. That would be nice too. So now I'm covering the edges, which are white because I just cut, with that same ink, and now it seems that's a perfect flower. Very well cut, more or less. And it also adds a little bit of vintage look on the edges, very subtle. And now I'm going to curl up and give it some volume so I can stick it on top of the actual stamped flower. And it will seem it's bulky and outstanding from the card. There are proper tools to actually do this, but I'm basically using my brush and my hands as I can. So I'm curling the edges up and then making, with the back of the brush, I'm kind of doing like a round shape towards everything. It would be better if the brush was thicker and bigger, but well, it worked. And then now to the edges, I curl them up a little bit, and I worked it a little bit more. I mean, here I'm using a very heavy cardstock, so it was pretty tricky to actually give it a shape, but also it's sturdy, so you can manipulate it a lot if you need to. Probably a less thick, so a thinner cardstock may work better for me to modify it and give it more volume, but I'm happy with it, and it will keep its shape. So now I'm going to apply some ink to the edges of the tag. That would give the tag a better look. It will basically force you to look at the center of the card if everything is framed, and it will look more finished and more vintagey as well. Now I'm going to apply goldencents, infusions, spritz with water to all the back of the card. And that again instantly gives you a vintage look, and it adds color to the background. But as you can see, the ink is not moving because it's waterproof. So now I'm going to cut the different pieces, the remaining ones, the butterfly. I forget about the antennas because basically it will be too difficult to cut. And I'm doing the same, I'm just adding some ink to the edges so you don't see the white. And again, I'm curling that up so then it seems that it's 3D. And I'm cutting those lines. I'm not that fast, I really speed this up. And then, as I said before, that violetta kind of stands out too much, so I'm toning it down with a bit of goldencents on top of it, just by brushing it, to just get a warmer look. And now I'm applying goldencents on top of the tag to different bits and pieces, just to see that walnut and some more detail there. And I'm just drying it partially with a paper towel. and I'll let it dry. And then I'm going to cut that. Again, this is heavy cardstock, very heavy, so it's very tricky to tear. So what I'm doing is I'm applying some water first. That's how I refill my bottle. I just wanted to show you. And now, because it's wet, it will be much easier to actually tear off. And I'm testing which side it is. I like to see the actual paper turned. So as you see on the other side, I'm testing what is the way for me to actually have the same finish. And I can see it's the other way, so yeah, cutting it like that. So then in turned paper, if you applied infusions, as you will see, it will get darker. Okay, now I'm testing where it will go. So I'll add some more infusions to get those edges, well, popping out and darker. And then, well, you'll see that it does fit there, but it's not seen as well as I would like to. So I'm basically cutting that in half, and I'll assemble that. So now it's time for assembling everything. And for that, I'm going to use the Distress Collage Medium Matte Finish. You could use any sort of glue, but I trust this one very much. It dries super quickly and it dries very strong. So both things I love about a glue. Just decided to apply another hint of ink on the edges of the sentiment. And then I'm just sticking those sides there. So I'm applying glue over there. Be careful with your brushes. Once you finish, really clean them, because otherwise it will be one less brush that you have available because this dries very hard. Okay, so clean them once you finish straight away with water, or put them directly into a jar with water that you have. That should be enough as well. So now I'm putting the glue on the edges of the flower, which are basically the ones that are outstanding more, because that's the only part of the flower that will touch my tag. And once it's there, I place that, I press a little bit, and it will perfectly dry, so I don't need to put any more pressure or anything. Just by touching paper with paper, it's good to go, and it will be perfectly sticked. You see, I don't manipulate that a lot. Now I'm seeing where the butterfly will end up, and I decide that I like it up there. And again, I'm applying glue only on the parts where I think that will touch the card, so on the wings and on the body. And just placing that there. I really like that, and it's very nice if you also stamped a second butterfly and put it underneath, so you could see both, and it would seem that two wings are kind of coming out, so it would seem more real. I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but yeah, that looks very nice. So now I'm attaching the other part, which is the sentiment, and I'll cut the excess from behind the tag, so I know that I'm following the line of the tag basically. You don't see it very well, but there I'm cutting. Well, my tag is finished, and this is what it looks like. I hope you liked it. I'll show you now some more pictures so you can see the details better. Remember, if you'd like me to create an online course for you, let me know in the comments below, and also let me know what you'd like to learn about. I'm adding now some videos which you may like to see as well. That's all for today. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!